Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Rose.
And I'm Jessica Bun Bun.
This is our Nine Perfect Strangers Season 2, Episode 7 reaction and review. I just want to start this video with a question for you, for everyone out there. Is there another show in recent memory you can think of where you have a couple of scenes and you sit back and you're like, that's pretty good. I'm interested in these characters. I'm interested to see where it's going. And then it's immediately followed by 5 minutes of something that makes no sense whatsoever, because that is my experience watching this show. I alternate between liking it and enjoying it to wanting to pull out what's left of my hair.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone over this a little bit during this season. Season 1 was excellent. Like, it felt very balanced in what was going on. You had Masha, who was kind of new at what she was doing. This was kind of like her first real retreat where she had people there and she was also participating, but she was also running everything and everybody was in it together. But it was more about the clients and the families and the people that were there than it was really about Masha. Masha had one goal. She wanted to see her daughter. Okay, that goal has been achieved at the end of the season. Now we're here where this is really about money and business and, that whole side of this where we're getting more of a peek behind the scenes. We're seeing Martin and his mom and their side of the business and him as the scientist, and Masha's trying to get money together and keep the business going, and there's fighting between Martin and Masha about the business and she's trying to seal the business. I don't care about this business. This isn't what I'm watching this show for. I'm watching this show for these amazing transformations and things that are happening where people are like really diving into themselves and their trauma and trying to figure it out so that they can move forward. And I think that that's what the magic was in season 1. And the magic is just not here in season 2 because they're focusing, they're trying to fit those stories in, but they're like an afterthought. It's really about the business and what is going on with the business. And then they're tacking on the end here this whole like, and now David, you are on trial for the murder of my daughter. I'm like, oh my God.
There's just, I think, a fundamental misunderstanding this season of what it is that people liked about season 1. And it was not, and this is no offense to Nicole Kidman. I mean, obviously, she's an acclaimed actress, but it's not Masha. It's the other people around Masha and
Yeah.
maybe how Masha impacts them. And that's
Mhm.
why
Yeah.
I want more, silly as it is, of Brian talking to his puppet bear. I want more of Agnes sleeping in the bed. It's like those are the things that make this show special. Those are the characters and the performances that are just inherently really, really interesting. Like even Victoria and Imogen, who had a little bit of a storyline in this episode. But it's just, rather than focus on that stuff, it feels like the producers are like, you know what? You guys already had that in season 1, so we're going to give you this nonsense instead. And it's just, fundamentally, I'm not invested in Martin. So to see him like, dancing around and seeing Helena or whatever else is going on with him, it's just like, I don't really care. That doesn't really mean anything to me. And it's the same with Masha and David at this point.
Yeah, I'm not invested in Martin. I'm not invested in Helena. They didn't spend enough time with them for me to get to this point where all of a sudden he's like, am I capable of evil? I'm like, capable of evil. Where are we going with this? Martin has not been built up to get to this point to have this break.
No, well, we're going to try to make sense of everything we've seen here and also try to make sense as to where they're going to go in the finale. But before we do, be sure to hit that subscribe button because, yeah, we do still have more to get through here with Nine Perfect Strangers. And beyond that, we are gearing up for a very busy summer with Dexter Resurrection. In addition to Alien Earth, we don't want you guys to miss coverage on either one of those shows.
Yeah, for Dexter, we're going to have videos 3 times a week. We're going to be doing reviews, previews, theories. So hit that subscribe button and stick with us. Really helps us here at the channel if you do hit that subscribe button. And also over on our Patreon right now, we are covering Murderbot and Criminal Minds Evolution. And it's the only place that you can get those weekly reviews. So I'll leave a link for you below in the description if you do want to join. It helps us out as well. Thank you
Guys. We appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start here with the good. My favorite part of this episode, and still my favorite part of the season, is everything Murray Bartlett is doing. I think that his whole storyline with him and the bear, who's basically just telling him off and like making him feel terrible about himself. And we finally have what I think is an interesting breakthrough for him, where he's finally recognized it. And this show has put me in this uncomfortable place where it's like I have to root for this stuffed bear who is so cute and so adorable being shoved into this suitcase, because that's actually Brian turning off like this element of his self-doubt. It's like, I like this. This is interesting. Why is this not the show?
They haven't used him
I
nearly
know.
enough this season. He's an incredible actor. This is a really solid story. I have been waiting for 7 episodes now to get more of this, and they've just been kind of using him a bit more as comedic relief with him and Agnes, where they're like playing with the marionettes, they're having a splash in the wine bath. Like, all of that is fun or whatever, but
Yeah.
that's not what this show ever was. And now it is. And I'm kind of like, you've got 2 really solid stories with Brian, with Agnes. And it's like, okay, so you gave her this one episode
Yeah.
where we learned about her, and then you just kind of left her to just be buddies with Brian for the rest of it. And the same with Brian. And it's not enough. I mean, Brian needs to be on the journey through the whole season. And it's kind of like we have a tiny bit, then just playtime, and then this. It's so disjointed.
It really makes me wonder, and it's tinfoil hat time. And
Mhm.
I'm not necessarily saying that they made this show up as they went along, but what I am saying is just this idea that, did they not know what show they were making while they were making it? Like, I'm very curious if there's all this stuff on Agnes and Brian that's sort of left on the cutting room floor. I know that there were all these stories. It's been a while since I brought this show up, so I feel like it's time that I can talk about The Idol again on
Oh
HBO.
my God.
Idol is the worst thing I've ever seen on television, at least when it comes to like a much hyped premium cable show. But there's this lore that there was basically another entire show made of The Idol that never ended up seeing the light of day because Sam Levinson took over and supposedly just like turned the whole thing around. And I'm just like, is there an alternate version of Nine Perfect Strangers where we have more of a guy like Brian, where this story, this idea of, oh, he's been canceled. I mean, granted, they didn't really go boldly enough when it comes to how he was canceled, because it really, in the grander scheme of things, yeah, he lost his temper, it's a bad thing, but how can somebody like that get back into society and quote unquote redeem himself? Like, that's such an interesting story. It's not something a lot of shows are bold enough to touch. And it's just like, yeah, you've kind of showed him working on himself a little bit, but he's also just been a tool for exposition. But it would be more interesting to see him re-enter society and he actually try to, reintegrate himself. But they're not doing any of that.
Yeah, this episode felt like, let's tie up all the guests so we
Yeah.
can get to this big finale coming up where Masha has David on trial for something he never did.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to be involved in it because, we saw Brian kind of make his breakthrough with his bear and everything that happened there. And Agnes was also still kind of at the remnants of things to be like, oh, I feel like, people are really leaning on me and I don't want to be leaned on anymore because of what happened. Like, that's not part of my life anymore and I don't want that anymore. So she's had her realization. Peter's had his realization where he's like, oh man, I really want this relationship with my dad, but my dad doesn't want more than what he's willing to give me, which is a very relatable storyline for so many adult children out there.
Yeah.
That their parents are able to give what they can give, but it may not be enough for you because either you're lacking something in your childhood or whatever it is. Peter's come to the realization as an adult that his father is only going to give him what he's able to give him, and he has to accept that his father is who he is and that's what he can get from it. But then he's like, but then I had you, Imogen, and you were willing and wanting to give me all of you, and that you wanted to be here with me, and I turned my back on that, and I, should have instead embraced this instead of trying to work on things with my dad who's not going to change. And to that, I just have to say, Peter, these are not the same relationships. The relationship you have with your parents, like, you haven't gotten there yet, can't be replaced with a romantic romantic relationship. Your parents are your parents. Romance is romance. They are different. Like they'll be able to fill some of your love cup, but they are never going to be able to replace what you lost from your parents. It doesn't work like that.
And all of this is inherently really interesting. Like these are discussions the show could be having where we could get inside Peter's head and we can watch him spiral out, but also kind of feel like, okay, maybe this is him getting on the right road. Maybe this is him coming to the realizations he needs. But because we spent such a limited amount of time with Peter, you know, to some extent with Imogen, it feels like we've gotten the Cliff Notes version of like, here's who this guy is. Here's what this relationship is between him and Imogen, where we've had, I don't know, maybe 6 scenes featuring the two of them.
They've also rushed through this Victoria storyline. This
Yeah.
is such a deep, hard storyline, and we got like a couple of scenes in this episode, or a couple scenes in this episode with Imogen and Victoria where they're talking about, you know, oh, cool, you know, you just didn't tell me that you have this ailment and that, you know, yeah, you've got maybe a couple of years left. What, you just weren't going to tell me? Oh, I thought you couldn't handle it. You know, you're a 35-year-old woman, but you can't handle it. And it's kind of like, okay, so I get where Imogen's coming, where she's like, well, what was your plan then? You're just going to die, and then I'm going to find out later, and you think that I'm going to be able to handle that better than knowing what was going on, being able to enjoy the last time I have with you. But instead, you're going to leave me with the burden of, you never told me. I am going to find out what you died of. So I am going to find out that you knew this whole time and you could have given me more time. But instead, you took that time. And now I got to carry that with me that I didn't know. I wasted the time. And now I have that burden.
Yeah. And that's a lot. And that's some really, really heavy stuff. Really, really interesting stuff once again. And this is why
buried in 2 scenes.
I am so frustrated by this season in a lot of ways, because it's like there were legitimately good ideas here. Like there were really interesting stories that could have been told. And so I'm just sitting here and being like, okay, you had this really excellent cast. This is a really good cast of people in this idyllic, interesting location. And it's like, this is what we walked away with. It just feels like, I don't know, I've used this analogy before too, but it's you filmed this season 10 different times. This the worst version of the season that we're going to get. And I'm not saying it's terrible, because, you know, episode 5 was terrible. This is not that level bad by any means, but it just feels like what we could have had here is, I don't know, 9 out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10. It just thinks there is so much potential that is being untapped, either because these episodes aren't long enough or focusing on the wrong things. I don't care about Masha and David whatsoever, and it's just shortchanging all these other moments that could have been exceptional.
I do not care about the business side of things. I do not care about this weird spycraft thing that's going on with Masha and David and her blaming him for the death of her daughter. Like, this is, I understand that when there's grief of loss of somebody and you want to put the blame on somebody, okay. But this is so wild and so out there that it just doesn't make any sense, especially since when Masha was starting to kind of make this story up in her head, she wasn't drinking the tea at that point. You know,
No.
nothing had happened at that point when she first had that run-in with David's business partner. She was just trying to figure out about David and what was going on and whatever. Like, nothing had happened yet.
I am in a very strange place now where I am openly rooting for Masha's downfall in episode 8, to the point where I don't want her to have any of this business. I don't want her to be doing this ever again. I want her to just be off somewhere where she has to live with what it is that she's doing, because I understand that she's grieving and I understand she's went through something very, very tragic, but it's just, this is not the way to deal with it, where you're trying to punish this guy who did not know anything that was going on. Like, how can you blame him? And then you're going to put him on this trial with all these other people who don't know him, who don't know anything about this situation, who, you know, They were all brought there with this idea of you helping them. What have you done, Masha? You've spent like a couple of minutes with some of them. Mateo is more functional than you are, and you were just basically like, have a nice day to him. And you have not done anything to help these people. Why are they incentivized to help you?
Yeah, and I mean, that brings us to that Martin scene because she really hasn't done anything. She's here for completely selfish reasons at this point. I know she
Yeah.
was brought in, but she's using this as this opportunity to blame David for everything so that she can maybe feel a bit better about herself and her own blame in what happened to her daughter, that, her daughter, got ahead of her a little bit. And this was not Masha's fault, but she feels like it's her fault, where she's like, okay, well, maybe I can put this blame on David instead. But we get to the Martin of it, and this fight between Martin and David, this was good. And it did bring us to, I guess, where Martin has completely unraveled, where he drank way too much tea and
Yeah.
things did not go very well for him. But seeing him finally express what's going on, where he's just like, man, Masha's supposed to be a partner with me here. She is supposed to be doing all of this with me. We are supposed to be, I'm not supposed to be just her assistant. Like, I'm the science behind this. I'm not supposed to be running these programs, but here I am because she's busy drinking tea and seeing her daughter, and he's outing all of her medical stuff, everything that she's doing, which isn't great. But at the same time, what Masha's doing isn't great. And, I think it does need to be brought out to everybody, because everybody is there for Masha, who is drinking tea in her room and just spying on everybody and not participating in what she invited everybody to participate in.
I welcome Martin having a meltdown, mostly just because I feel like that's the real way to get some sort of comeuppance here for Masha and everything that Masha's doing, where we can sympathize with her grieving, but we can still be like, this is a waste of time for everybody else who's at this retreat, who's trying to get some element of help. It's like, yeah, they might walk away with this feeling better about themselves in some ways. Like, it does seem like Brian is changing. Maybe Victoria and Imogen, like, now that they understand each other better, like, maybe they can get on a better road. But it's like, Masha shouldn't be able to take credit for a lot of this, because it's just like,
Oh,
what is she gonna do? Look at all I did. It's like, you did nothing. You were not involved in any of this sort of stuff. And that's gonna be, if that's how this season ends, where it's like these people are better, and she's just like, look what I done. I'm gonna be so annoyed.
no, Martin is the person that was there with everybody through all of this. And while, she may be putting together the doses, she's not monitoring anything.
No.
She's sitting behind a computer trying to find ways to blame David and get to David. This is all about David. Like, everything Martin said is true, that it's like this was all put together so she can get to David and have this thing for herself. This isn't about helping any of you. She hasn't participated in anything. I've participated in everything. And even though I'm not doing, the best job, at least I'm trying. At least I'm here for you. At least I'm trying to do something. I don't agree with everything David said, where David's
Yeah.
like, oh, you're just trying to discredit her by revealing all this medical information about her. How could you, how does that make you a good person, kind of thing. It's like, yeah, maybe this isn't the greatest way that he went about doing it, but he's having a meltdown, and
Yeah.
people during meltdowns will say things that maybe they shouldn't
Yeah.
say, but none of it is untrue.
No, all of it is true. And also, David, you are not the morality police. We know some of what you've done. All of these people are shady and messed up in their own individual ways. But okay, we've made it 7 episodes in, and I finally feel like in my brain, I have the comparison to what this season of 9 Perfect Strangers is. And this is not going to be flattering for some people out there, so just
Uh-oh.
be prepared.
All right.
This is True Detective season 2, which was not good. It came on the
Ooh.
heels of a really amazing first season where
It's
on
a good
paper,
comparison.
yeah, on paper, True Detective season 2 should have been outstanding. It had a great cast. It still had a lot of the same people involved. It was just not fully thought out, and it was just didn't make a lot of sense, and it just ended up feeling like a letdown. I mean, luckily for True Detective, they eventually come back in season 3 that's better. And, I've said that Night Country was my favorite show last year. I still stand by that,
Mhm.
but I don't know if Nine Perfect Strangers is going to get a redemption after this.
I don't know if they're coming back after this. Like, it's possible, but I don't know. And after this, and it hurts my heart to say this because I loved season one so much.
Yeah.
I don't think they should come back after this. They don't know what this show is anymore. Without the source material,
Yeah.
whoever is behind it is dropping the ball on what this show is about. We're not here to watch really Masha's story. Season one wasn't really about her story. She was basically just one of the participants in everything that was going on with all the different families and all the different people that were there. That's what made it special. It was an ensemble cast. And
Yeah.
here they're making it Nicole Kidman is the star and she's going to have her own episode. Now, the ending's all about Masha, and the first season wasn't about that. It was kind of, yeah, Masha had her own things that she wanted to have done. She wanted to see her daughter, but she was still participating in what everyone else was doing as well.
Yeah, I'm just sad, honestly, with where this season has gone. I mean, we're only one episode out. We're going to see how this ends. Maybe they can tie some things together. It's going to be hard, though, to tie everything together in a way that's just like, you know what? I feel really satisfied with this season now, thanks to this one episode at the very, very end.
They are not landing this plane. I'm saying that right now. Everybody put on your hard hat. If you do not like this Masha versus David storyline, like I don't, this plane isn't landing, because it seems like we are setting up for the trial of David, where he's either going to air out all this pretend dirty laundry of what he doesn't know is actually happening. He's going to get blamed for the death of her daughter, and everybody's going to be sitting around drinking tea and judging.
Okay, here's what's going to happen. At the end of the finale, we'll just all drink the tea and forget that a lot of this ever happened in the first place.
I'll just forget. I'll pass the tea, but I will absolutely forget that this happened, because this such a disappointment. I mean, like, I was so hyped. I was so hyped for this season.
Yeah.
The cast is great. Season one was so good. How could it go wrong? And with this trial of David, I mean, everyone else was woken up out of their sleep, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, at this point, even though we saw Brian have that whole interaction with his bear, it seems like they haven't drunk the tea. They were all, asleep in their rooms doing whatever. And that was like, emergency meeting. Everybody come down here. David has been given an incredibly high dose. He doesn't really know what is going on. She has lied to him and was like, I'm going to have you meet your daughter. Do you want to do that? Yeah, I want to do that. Do you trust me? Yeah, I trust you. Well, you shouldn't. And we even see Helena in the background there talking a little bit with Masha, where she's like, are you really going to do this? Yeah, I'm really going to do this. At first I was like, is she just going to kill him? Like, is that where we're going with this? So she feels a bit better that she's gotten revenge on David for what he's done to Tatiana. But instead, we are in this situation where we've got a bunch of guests that seemingly haven't drunk the tea, that are all woken up out of their sleep, and she is there with David, who is on a very high dose, basically being like, we're gonna rip apart everything that you did to get to the point that my daughter has ended up dead. How is everybody there going to really react to this? Because they're a little more sober.
That's the part of this that doesn't make a lot of sense for me, but I don't know if it's supposed to make a lot of sense, because I think Masha is delusional, right? Like, she's the most delusional character on this show at this point, to the point she's trying to live out a delusion. So I think because of all that, she doesn't really understand what's going to happen. And that's always been one of the big questions that I had with this season, where a lot of the tea experiments that she's done, it's not like any of this is proven. It's going to have different effects for different people. And if there's going to be a way to potentially, I don't know, bring about her undoing, or magically she's going to get away with all of this, it's going to be something happens with this tea that she does not expect. It's going to have some adverse reaction with David, or other people are going to start drinking a bunch of it, and then they're going to all start having these visions, but they're not necessarily going to go the way in which Masha wants them to go, because she's dealing with unproven technology. It would be like me managing to come up with this invention where I can sprout wings and fly around, which sounds awesome. Who wouldn't want to fly around? But I'm like, oh, it's going to work on everybody else. I give it to somebody else and it turns them into a turtle. It's just like, it doesn't work the same way for every single person.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. This is all unproven, like you said, right? So she's giving him a really high dose of tea that hasn't been proven yet. This disc that she's using that's releasing it into the system, this is all an experiment. And while David is at this point kind of like, I'll give you the moon, I'll give you the stars, anything that I can to basically, like Peter said, know the magic behind it, that he's a guy
Yeah.
that doesn't like losing control. And the way that you have control is by having information. If you know how something is done or being done or whatever, you have the information, the magic is gone. That's something that Peter has said that he's very much about. And once he's got that information, he's not interested in that anymore. He's moved on to the next thing. And Masha knows this, and she's even tried to be like, well, if you're that interested in this project, the only way that I'm okay with it is you have to give up all your other contracts, every other business dealing, every obligation, every contract you have has to be gone. Put all of your money and time to this. Do you not have enough money? You have enough money. You don't need all these other contracts or anything anymore. I'm like, Masha, you're asking him to put out like thousands of people out of jobs, like just close every other business down. What you're asking for is ridiculous.
This is why she's just not a likable character, where it's just like, yeah, you went through something really, really terrible, and I'm sorry it happened to you, but it's just, I'm not saying David's the greatest guy of all time, and I don't know who all the people who work for him are, if they're good people or not, but you are potentially ruining all these other lives just for the sake of you want something over David. If you're going to give David something, that he can potentially have it over you. It's just, this is a very bad negotiation. And then you're also bringing all of this potentially to the public in the form of your trial, where I think you're expecting that all these people are going to side with you because they all came to your retreat. And other than Peter, who's got his own messed up relationship with his dad, like, none of them have any reason to want to side with David.
Yeah, here's the thing. Okay,
Yeah.
so tinfoil hat. I think that the group is, because they're not dosed like David and they're not, kind of in this frantic state like Masha is, that they are going to end up basically having to stop Masha, save Masha, heal Masha, that this is going to be the big finale is going to be that Masha's going to find some sort of healing, and that it's going to be, now that the group has been healed in these quick little tie-ups
Yeah.
in this episode, that they are going to come together to heal Masha. And if that's the way that it goes, for me, it's going to feel like a disappointment, because Masha wasn't there to help heal them, where then they're in turn helping her. Kind of the way that it all came together in season 1, where she was helping people and people were then helping her with with the families. So here she's just been sitting behind a computer watching everybody, giving Martin instruction on what to do. So to have them all come together to help her when she didn't do anything for them is just, I don't know how that ends.
And I don't think it's going to end in a good way. And that's just what bums me out, is that there was so much potential here. It's just like that, like, all this stuff could be interesting. And yet, lo and behold, here we are entering the finale.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is where we are coming out of episode 7 of one of the most frustrating shows I can remember in quite some time. Still some good stuff mixed with a lot of just, what? But okay, well, let us know what you thought about episode 7. How do you think this is going to wrap up? Share in the comments. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other updates. And if you do want to support us further, join our Patreon. That link is in the description. We are covering exclusively there Criminal Minds Evolution and also Murderbot. Thank you so much. We'll see you here next time.